It's that time of the month again because Cybertruck leaks are just dropping left and right. So we've got all kinds of production hints to dive into today, starting with one from Elon himself, posting that he's been driving around the Austin area. I don't know if this is his personal Cybertruck, but Joe Tegmeyer definitely caught some shots of it driving around the Giga Texas facility, which was sweet. But what's far more interesting, in my opinion, is all of the winter testing going on in New Zealand. There's been several wrapped Cybertrucks there that are just hammering it through the snow, and it appears they're trying to get the back end to slip as much as they can. They're wobbling the steering woke back and forth as quickly as they can, probably testing out some different driving conditions, whether or not it will have different driving modes like off-road or snow, or perhaps even a range mode, kind of doing what Rivian has been doing with their quad motor setup. Simultaneously, I feel like Tesla is the kind of brand that just wants everything to work. You know, all input is error in their mind. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Cybertruck doesn't have a bunch of driving modes per se, but is just able to automatically detect what you're in the middle of doing based on your GPS data, or maybe even the cameras surrounding the car. You know, Cybertruck is rocking hardware 4. So if it finds a way to just go, oh, now I'm on snow, or now I'm on sand, or now I'm off-road, and the motors just kind of behave differently, same thing with the suspension, that might be the more Tesla way of going about it. But there was a really great shot of a wrapped Cybertruck this time in California, pretty much going at the fastest speed I think we've ever seen a Cybertruck prototype going. I'm not exactly sure how fast it is, but it supports my idea that I theorized on a few months ago when we first saw some of these updated prototypes driving around, where the back end of the truck definitely looks to be lowered more so than the front end. And my theory about this was that Tesla was testing some kind of high efficiency mode for highway driving by lowering the back end more, because the Cybertruck has this kind of natural inclination with the center line moving across, and because your ideal aerodynamic shape is going to be kind of like a teardrop, maybe for aerodynamic efficiency they want the back end to be a little bit lower when you're driving at high speeds, and that results in the front end being a little bit taller. And seeing the Cybertruck travel at highway speeds with that little off-centered suspension design, I think kind of supports that theory that this might be something that the Cybertruck automatically does when you're doing lots of highway driving and you just want to maximize your range. Here's hoping they can also integrate the same kind of decoupling technique that they put in the Tesla Semi, allowing them to essentially deactivate the rear powertrain when at highway speeds, so there's less resistance on that secondary motor. And while it doesn't necessarily unlock 40 to 50% more range like I've seen some people claim online, it definitely adds another 5 or 10%, which could make the difference between a 10 to 20 mile range difference when you're traveling at highway speeds. Also, just recently, another Tesla employee has likely been fired, unfortunately, because our first look at the body and white castings of the Cybertruck have now been seen inside Giga Texas. So this was quickly posted on social media and then taken down, but someone on Cybertruck Owners Club thankfully nabbed a shot of it so that we can still look at it. But I think what it's a good sign of is the fact that, for one, yes, the 9,000 ton Giga presses are operational, they're working, but also now that they're hanging up these body and whites in a factory rack format, that makes me think this is no longer just prototypes being hand built. This is actually like the assembly line in motion. It's cranking out parts, they're putting them together, and there's definitely been a ton of conversation on, wait a second, is the Cybertruck ditching the exoskeleton design? Because these castings are pointing to the idea that there's still a lot of structural rigidity inside the Cybertruck that's not relying on the exoskeleton, that's likely using a lot of the same alloys and casting tech that the Model Y and eventually the Model 3 is probably going to be relying on. And while I'm no engineering expert, I kind of defer to Monroe & Associates for that kind of analysis. Many people, including Corey at Monroe Live, have said that these leaked images point to the idea that the Cybertruck is not really going to be relying on an exoskeleton design per se. But I think a lot of the internet's opinion on that is very critical. First of all, they're like, oh, Elon Musk is just making stuff up so that they can say the exoskeleton is this revolutionary in engineering. Well, I think there's a lot more reasonable people about it saying, okay, it may not be relying on the exoskeleton design anymore, but that's actually better, because from a repairability standpoint, you can replace just the individual steel panels on the outside of the Cybertruck a whole lot easier than if the exoskeleton was holding the entire rigidity of the truck together and then something were to happen to it. But my perspective on that was, hey, it's a rigid, extremely durable exoskeleton, so it's going to take a heck of a lot of damage and impact to genuinely cause damage to that exoskeleton in the first place. So if there is some damage, it's likely the kind of impact or collision that would have totaled any other vehicle. And while I'm in speculative territory here, I definitely don't think it has to be one or the other. Like, it is either either 100% exoskeleton or it is 100% body on white, just traditional car design, and steel panels on the outside is just for looks and just for kind of being futuristic. And before, a lot of people say, well, if you're not going to do the exoskeleton design, what's the point of this whole pickup truck being weird and cyber-esque? Doesn't that mean that this whole design is pointless? Well, no. This design is probably the most aerodynamic pickup truck we've ever seen before. Having that singular sheet of the front hood all the way up to the windshield and having that straight seam that goes all the way down to the tailgate, that's really, really good for aerodynamics, and in terms of vault storage area, that also enables more cargo capacity that can be locked and sealed away. Definitely important, in my opinion, with electric pickup trucks, because you want to avoid towing if at all possible, because as we know, even with longer range EV pickup trucks, charging stations are not well optimized for pull-through, which is why if it's possible to keep your cargo capacity inside the vault, then I definitely think Tesla wants you to side with that, because it's going to be far better for your aerodynamics, which in return results in far better range. So there's other benefits to this design aside from just the durability argument of the exoskeleton, but I also think there's probably somewhat of a hybrid design approach here. Like, yes, there is a traditional underbody with casting similar to that of the Model Y, but I also think there's a decent chance that the steel panels on the outside are going to improve the rigidity of the overall vehicle, improve its structural soundness, and complement this state-of-the-art air suspension system that we've seen little sneak peeks of here and there, but mostly what we've gathered from the suspension system is that it's the most advanced one Tesla's ever built by far, and likely one of the most advanced systems in the world. So no, it may not be 100% exoskeleton as much as Tesla originally claimed it would be, but I'm sure the changes that they've made internally likely are for the benefit of the consumer. It improves the repairability, and I still think regardless of whether or not that it needs to be this exact shape, because it's not relying 100% on the exoskeleton for rigidity anymore, I still think the aesthetic has totally won a ton of people over. Cybertruck content wins more eyes than any other electric truck out there. Rivian R1T delivery times are definitely way down. Same thing with F-150 Lightning sales, and the fact that this vehicle has been able to increase the amount of lockable storage you have, and regardless what you think of exoskeleton or not, it still doesn't require paint, which means likely at least the outside of the vehicle is going to age far better than any other pickup truck. People online are complaining that, well, the internals of the Cybertruck, because that's not using the rigid stainless steel, then it's going to rust internally. Well, the internals of the truck, guys, are less likely to be exposed to the elements. It's the outside of the truck that is exposed the most to the rain, the snow, the salt, little rock pebbles and things that chip our paint across everyday vehicles that won't chip the paint on this vehicle because there isn't any. So in my head, I'm not trying to be some diehard Tesla fanboy here, but I still think there's a lot of advantages even without the exoskeleton of the Cybertruck's design language. And while Tesla changes their mind on things all the time, left and right, they're always making changes. For the most part, those changes have some kind of logic and reason behind it. I'm personally convinced that the Cybertruck will be by far the most profitable electric pickup truck on the market. Only one exterior choice to choose from, and I'm guessing only one tire choice from the factory. Probably only one interior choice to choose from, so the only configuration is, do you want full self-driving or not? And that's just a software thing. That's not even a hardware change they have to make. And knowing how Tesla's using these 9,000-ton gigapresses to reduce the number of parts and processes, not to mention they have these super minimal and clean interiors compared to any other truck on the market. So yeah, I think Tesla, while they'll probably start out the Cybertruck super duper expensive, they will have the most margin and the most wiggle room to lower prices over time as they catch up with demand. But that's the thing, I don't think Tesla's going to be able to catch up with demand for quite some time because there is just so much pent-up demand for the Cybertruck. I don't think people have truly grasped it. No, I don't think the majority of the paid reservations would go through, but just to be clear, even if only 10% of Cybertruck reservations go through, they still have a multi-year backlog, and they're going to need a ton of cells for every one of these trucks, so I don't expect it to ramp as quickly as the Model Y or the Model 3 did, because those are inherently smaller, less complicated vehicles. I know they have paint, but they don't have this complex air suspension, they don't have this new high voltage architecture, they don't have this new casting design, this new interior design with new displays, new steering wheel, new controls, and those vehicles don't have the vault cover or the tailgate ramp. Elon himself has said this is not going to be an easy vehicle to mass produce, so I expect the ramp up to go relatively slowly. I think there's only going to be employee deliveries this year, and then we'll start to see customer deliveries early next year, and once they ramp up and catch up on all of the reservations, that's when you'll likely see some price drops, and Tesla will likely be able to cut those prices much more than all of these other startups and legacy automakers because they are just burning through cash to delivering all these EVs. But what do you guys think of the Cybertruck leaks so far? Do you like seeing the testing? Do you like seeing the camouflage wrap attempts Tesla's been making? Feel free to let me know down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.